In my previous vlog on the Sheffield Vegan Festival, I mentioned animal rebellion and the October Rebellion. I thought I should say a little more about this today as the International Rebellion kicks off. As I mentioned previously, animal rebellion is a mass volunteer movement demanding that the government ends the destructive animal farming and fishing industries and leads the transition towards a just, sustainable, plant-based food system, the only one that can minimise the risk of climate breakdown, halt mass extinction and avert social collapse. But animal rebellion is just part of a much larger international movement demanding immediate action in the face of the climate and ecological emergency. An emergency caused by the state of the current dominant systems, political, social and economic, under which we live. Many countries across the world are already struggling with the impacts of this climate and ecological disaster, which their governments are unwilling to talk about. Our world is in crisis. Life itself is dying. Life is precious. Yet across the world, spearheaded by the younger generation, people are waking up and coming together and rebelling for life. Today, October the 6th, 2019, hundreds will gather at Marble Arch at 5 p.m. to mark the beginning of the International Rebellion, bringing with them lanterns and harvest symbols. Diverse communities and voices will come together to light a beacon of truth, rooted together in love and sharing songs of courage whilst reflecting on our extinction crisis. They will celebrate our planet's rich species and mourn the loss of so many of them. The beacon will initiate 2 weeks of rebellion in London as part of wider direct action protests at locations around the world. Following the opening ceremony, the beacon's light will be carried in lanterns to key locations in London to keep its flame alive during the rebellion. Starting Monday the 7th of October, after the ceremonial opening of the night before, tens of thousands of people will return once again to disrupt capital cities around the world, blocking roads, bridges, transport links and more. Actions expected in more than 60 cities from Paris to Berlin and all the way around the world, including Los Angeles, Santiago, Washington DC, New York, Montreal, Buenos Aires, Dublin, Madrid, London, Amsterdam, Prague, Vienna, Cape Town, New Delhi, Mumbai, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth and Wellington. Extinction Rebellion currently has a presence in more than 72 countries, with a total of 485 groups across a total of 473 cities and towns. The International Rebellion is intended to pressure governments to meet Extinction Rebellion's demands. These actions vary from country to country, but the same fundamental demands are at their core: that governments and other institutions tell the truth and declare a climate and ecological emergency, acting now to halt biodiversity loss and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2025. These key principles unite activists across the planet. Their vision is for a regenerative culture, where all systems, communities, tribes, races, religions, families, individuals, and natural life can be, in relationship and in abundance. A world in which our children want to live. In solidarity with Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rebellion will mobilise thousands of animal advocates for a 2-week rebellion in London, peacefully occupying key sites to force the government to address the destruction caused by the animal farming and fishing industries, and to take action urgently against the climate emergency. The October Rebellion begins on Monday the 7th of October. It will consist of collective action, community building and self-development. There will be singing and grieving for the animals whose bodies lay within Smithfield, as well as more positive aspects with social and festival activities, training and entertainment, as protesters unite under the vision of the world they're striving to build. Participants will meet at Russell Square, Bloomsbury, London at 11 a.m. on Monday the 7th of October. In the afternoon there'll be a march to Smithfield Market where protesters will occupy the site to share their vision of a future plant-based food system. Smithfield Market, of course, is London's largest and most historic meat market. The iconic Smithfield Archway will be occupied overnight to demand the government transform Smithfield to a fruit and veg market that can serve as a hub for a thriving plant-based food system. On October the 8th, the march will take place from Smithfield to the Garden City, just across from the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, the government department chiefly responsible for upholding the animal agriculture industry. Having shared their vision at Smithfield, the protesters will be taking the message to Westminster to pressure the government to make that vision a reality. By turning out in vast numbers, by holding strong throughout the night, by risking arrest, by bringing attitudes of peace and care not just towards animals but to even those in the industry whom they view as victims of our society's toxic system, they hope to spark conversations across the globe and win the hearts of the public, thereby forcing the government to recognise that it must take action and move to a plant-based food system. But it seems that our own UK government is already worried. Yesterday, the Metropolitan Police raided a warehouse in London and confiscated Extinction Rebellion supplies. They've also arrested a number of intending protesters ahead of this week's actions. They seem to view the protests as a threat to our peaceful society, yet, as I said earlier, social collapse could ultimately be brought about by our present unsustainable systems. This rebellion shouldn't be confused with anarchy. People of all ages and from all walks of life and political persuasions will be involved. This is democracy. As Extinction Rebellion says, the emergency isn't going away, and neither are we.